Hmm. Wait for Joe, let's. All right, let's get started. Helen, when you talk tonight, you gotta get the mic closer to you, because I had to listen to something for those minutes. All I heard was. Calling the meeting to order, what is it? 7:32. All right, so first, agenda item is review and approval. February 12th, 2025. LMT Historical Commission. I'm not good with distractions beforehand. Okay. Now we're gonna go to number one, review and approval of January 2025 meeting, minutes. Anybody? Changes, approve, motions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Cool. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Treasurer's report, Tom.
Yes, for the foundation account, we just had one expense since our last meeting, which was $2,800 for the GPNR. So as of the end of January, this year, the foundation account has $16,659.30. The LMT general fund, there were no expenses since our last meeting, and the funds as of the end of January were $18,654.72.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move to existing business updates. That is Jeff. Historic Resources Survey. Sorry, Jeff. Oh, Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Tom, I'm looking at the 2025 budget as being 41,250. So
Say that again, Joe, you're
I'm
kind
looking
of
at
garbled.
I'm looking at our budget for this year from the township. It's 41,250.
Well, did we receive additional funds for the first of the year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, new year, new budget.
Okay, well, I haven't accounted for that then.
Okay.
You okay with going to Jeff now, Joe? Any
Yeah,
other?
yeah, fine,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. All right, Jeff, back to you.
So it looks like the insurance issue has been resolved with the contractor. So that I believe that Jim is moving to get it signed, the contract. Contract signed, I will then get with the PA Historic Commission to get us the training. Understand that the applications for the iPhone and Android that are used in the survey are complicated, and I want to put the training as close to the time we use them as possible, rather than train and then everyone forgets how to use it in between. So we'll work with Jeff Marshall to see when we can start doing the survey, and we'll get the training scheduled just before that.
Yeah, I just want to add, so the final approval is supposed to happen, I guess it's next week at the Board of Supervisors meeting, or that's when the final approval, because they have to sign off on it. So Jeff and I will be attending that meeting if anybody else would like to attend also.
Can you say the date again of the supervisors meeting? What's the date again, you said?
The 19th, right?
Yeah, the 19th.
Okay.
They usually start, I think, at like 7:30. All right, next on the agenda is demolition ordinance status. Joe, want to take the lead on that?
Yes, so last time we spoke, we sent the demolition ordinance over to the Bucks County Planning Commission for their feedback. We got that feedback. They made just two recommendations. One was that we make sure that we have someone who's appropriately qualified actually do the determination of historic eligibility, which, as we discussed, was a point that Dan Grenier brought up also. And then the second was that we consider doing an overlay for the houses that are listed. And that's something that Cathy and I spoke with Colin Coyle from the Planning Commission today about. Colin recommended that we move forward with the demolition ordinance first, get that in place, and then we can come back and discuss overlays at a later point. So I think we did talk to Dave. It's not on the agenda for the 19th. So I'm hoping it's on the agenda for the next meeting and we can get it to the point where the Board of Supervisors approves it to be advertised. They have to advertise it twice. And if there's no feedback, then they approve it.
Helen didn't catch all of that. I mean, essentially, we're in the process. Bucks County came back with their feedback. And there's a few things we have to tweak out. We talked to Colin from planning also, because one of the things suggested was an overlay, but he was kind of saying one step at a time, let's get the ordinance passed, and then we'll think about the next step. It's not on the agenda of Board of Supervisors for the 19th. We are hopeful it will be on their next meeting agenda to get it passed finally. Okay? Got it? Oh, one of the recommendations that came back from Bucks was that the person making the historic determination be a qualified person, which is also something that Dan Grenier had brought up at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and that's one of the reasons the historical resource we kind of redirected to Jeff Marshall, because he's a historian who can assist us with.
My question, I guess, is just looking at some of the past surveys, are we going to be using only federal standards, or are we going to be using the old state and local standards for importance?
Joe or Jeff want to take that?
Oh, we'll be using the ones the state of Pennsylvania requires us to do with the funding they've given us. So I believe it's the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, there used to be an old state list of qualified properties, and the state had different restrictions than the federal government had. And so when the first windshield survey was done in 1980, I was looking at it, and it has buildings that are eligible for National Register. Then it has buildings eligible for State Register. And then it has buildings eligible for what at the time was Heritage Conservancy standards, which is a lesser standard. So I was wondering if that's what we're going to be looking at as well.
I would say two things. So first of all, the Historic Resource Survey doesn't by itself make a statement of historic significance. It just says it's old and it's intact. So that's all the survey will do. Now, as we move from survey to demolition ordinance and we move to the register for demolition ordinance, we need to bring in the a view on historical significance, or a statement at least say of historical significance. Helen, since that time, they've unified the standards. So what the federal government has done is said that in order to be eligible for the National Register, you could have historical significance at the national level, at the state level, or at the local level. So they don't distinguish as much as they used to. So the criteria that we would use would be the ones that are for the National Register. So the four that they give us. And then we would have to just state, is the significance significant to Lower Makefield, to Bucks County, to the state of Pennsylvania, or to the national level. We just have to put that in our statement.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about some of this under new business.
It's in the weeds. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'm just going to, because I wanted to get this back on the agenda. It had been on the agenda and we kind of lost it. So quick updates on demolitions that are happening. So Joe and I and Helen have been doing some stuff behind the scenes, and then we had a little tour today. So Wright Farm, they actually had a lovely historic review done that I think I sent to you all. And basically they said it's not historic because the history has been kind of all destroyed or gone. I gotcha. We have asked for a tour. Helen wants a tour of the property, and we are still trying to negotiate that. And Colin is also, he'll support us with that from planning too, if need be. So we will still, and we reserve the right that if we go into the house and we see something to pull back and say that there's history, but they did have a proper assessment done. Edgewood, which is a hard project, the point that was actually totally approved by the Board of Supervisors. We had asked for documentation of the interior of the buildings because they're going to tear down most of them. We asked, yeah, I mean, we're only saving one and one's, yeah. Well, we're only saving one. But anyway, Jim Majewski told me that Troilio, the developer, told him that they actually had a historic review, that Jeff Marshall reviewed those properties, and I'm trying to get that document from Jim. But Victor's going to go over one day and also document it, because at this point, we didn't really have any standing to make demands. It was so far in the process. Today, we took a field trip to River Road, 743 River Road. So I was there, Mitch was there, Jeff was there. Colin from planning joined us. So essentially that situation, it's a rather tragic situation, but anyway, a developer bought it. There's lot one with historic building, or a building that we need to determine is historic.
Justice House.
The Justice House. And Helen had done some initial research on it. And then there's a driveway and an empty lot over which we have no control. And of course, said developer is going to tear down that beautiful barn and build a house there. So I don't know, Joe, do you want to talk more about the other stuff about thing under new business? But essentially, we toured it, and we're going to need to take some next steps as if the ordinance affected it, because it's a fascinating building. We have something on the Google Drive, 743 River Road. I uploaded my pictures, but I wasn't the primary photographer, so I'm waiting for. So Jeff and Mitch are going to also. And Jeff wants to say something.
Yeah, and just something to add is, in speaking with the potential buyer, he hasn't bought the property yet. He's still.
Says they're in agreement.
They're in it. They have an agreement. The financing is being lined up, but I got the impression that if the historic significance of the house prevents it being torn down, that might stop the financing. Just something to throw in there.
He thinks the sale could fall through if we find it historically significant. So those are the properties where I'm going to take Wright Farm and the point off of the agenda, but we'll keep 743 River Road. They have not filed for anything yet, so we're actually earlier in the game than we usually are.
See anything that indicates that it dates to the Cadwalder family's use of the house or to the Justice use of the house?
What timeframes are both those two families?
Around 1790, and the justices came in, I think, the last Cadwalder that was there died in 1730. So it's 1730 to present. So that's the more Georgian Victorian section.
So there's a section of the house that has a very large kitchen fireplace that was obviously the original part of the house. And yeah, easily, because it's about almost 10 feet wide. With two swing arms, cauldrons, a bread box, everything. Like, so it's very old, full hearth fireplace. So I would say that's definitely 1700s in that part of the house. The rest of the house is full of fireplaces too, which would indicate it was heated by fireplaces originally, before wood burning stoves and such, which again, late 1700s, early 1800s.
the female version and Gedwalder, so it's a really important name and family in Lower Makefield. And at one point, that house was the 5th most expensive house in the township. That's 1870. It was the 5th most expensive behind Yardley, Alderston. Okay. Light keeps going in and out. So the most expensive houses in 1870 were Yardley's house, which is now part of Yardleyville, Balderston's house, which is up off of Woodside Road. The Seneca Bean's house, which was just recently torn down on Quarry Road, and this house. So they're like the top 5 in the township.
So I think we're going to hold a further discussion because under new business, Joe had me add how do we prioritize what historical resources to save and kind of procedural stuff. So Joe, did you want to talk about it there or do you want to talk about it more here?
No, I think we did because this is specific for this house. And
Okay.
I think we'll talk about it here. But what I was going to say is, you know, the comments that both Helen and Jeff just made are really very valuable because I think what we should be doing is making a strong enough case that this house is historically significant to ask them to have a historic resource report done. And by that, I mean, if you look at the report that Cathy sent out about for the Wright Farm, Breezy Valley, that was called, yeah, something like that. But if you look at that report, right, that's pretty extensive. They go back and they do a lot of deed research in terms of who owned the house, what was the significance. They do an architectural piece. If we can make the case that this is historically significant, we could ask for that to be done before a demolition permit would even be considered. And then we can see what he says. So I think all of that information, Jeff and Helen, what you said, if you would please put that in an email to Cathy and I, because Cathy and I are going to try to piece this thing together, you know, and send it around for comment before we send it to the township and say, this is our assessment.
That's good. That's really good as long as we get a competent person assessing that house. I objected a lot to the assessment report that for the structure, the Wright house, because the woman was on the wrong total trail of chain of title was incorrect. So I would really hope we get someone who will do a good job on it. That's all.
Right. Helen, I would say that every one of these damn things that we've read has been the same. You know, there's been some, I mean, we looked at the one also that was done for Prickett Preserve, and there's some really egregious mistakes in that too. So I don't know. I mean, the PHMC has a list of people that are qualified for this. I think we would have to go to that list and insist they choose someone from that. But I don't know if we can really, we can just hope for the best when it comes to the output.
I know we can always challenge it. Okay.
Yes.
So there's
Yeah.
always that.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Anything else on River Road? Okay. Cataloging township-owned materials. Do you want to speak, Dawn? I know you'd like me to speak, but yeah, I think where we're at is every step leads to more steps and more complications, as these things are prone to do. Dawn has been working closely. I went once to the Newtown Historical Society, which does amazing stuff, and she has managed to recruit a couple people from there to help us.
Well done.
So we're moving towards the next step, which is physically kind of cataloging what's in that cabinet back there and starting our numbering system. So I think next month, I don't think we're prepared to do it this month. We're going to make a budget request for all of the fancy things you have to put documents in. And then we reevaluated our past perfect thing, and we're going to keep it on a computer for probably the first year until we get everything up and going. And then we'll do the online access because I think it's really important to us. And I think everybody's in agreement that we want it to be public facing because Newtown Historical, for whatever reason, keeps everything top secret. You have to go there. Did I miss anything? Okay, so yeah, slow and steady, slow and steady.
Fun.
All right, Monica, Slate Hill Cemetery, over to you.
Some updates. We know the tree fell down last month. It's been removed beautifully, but there's really concerns about all those trees, especially on the original and middle section. So I'm trying to meet with Derek to make a legitimate plan because I think, we had a couple arborists walk through and none of them called out the one that did fall. So I think they're all a disaster. So I'm going to propose with Derek, we just need to make a plan to cut down those giant ivy-ridden trees over the next couple of years as just preventative measures from hurting people and the stones. So, but with all these storms, he keeps having to, he's like, I'm not sleeping. I can't meet about your trees right now. Fair enough. So once these storms all calm down, he and I are going to meet. The grant is moving along. So I've made a detailed schedule. I'm not going to share all the details with you, but I'll send it to you, Cathy. But basically, I now have, I think, what I need to put together the RFP, which I will send to Cathy and everyone to review basically end of next week. And then work in time to work with Jim to get it up to spec and code with L&T. Then we're going to have to go to the Board of Supervisors to get their approval to request bids, which I'm hoping for the March 19th supervisors meeting. And then there's the process of doing the ads and getting the bids and all that. I've timed it all out. And ideally, I know from experience, sometimes we get kicked off of the agenda from the Board of Supervisors meeting. So I'm trying to keep it loose. So I have basically all of June and July. So four Board of Supervisors meetings. If we meet all the deadlines leading up, we have 4 meetings in a row that we could get on to still stay on schedule. So there's definitely wiggle room worked into here because I know that there's bumps here and there. But I think you guys have learned a lot in the resource survey process, which has helped me. So thank you. And then ultimately, as long as we get the approval in one of those 4 meetings on the vendor we recommend based on their bids, we'll award the contract at the end of July. Again, I've worked in a solid month to finalize the contract and all that stuff. And then work can start in September. And really the actual work is only a week, if that, for them. And a lot of the prep work will be done from the mapping project that Cathy's been running. So we're in good shape. I have an actual schedule and steps. And so I'll keep you guys posted every month on that. Speaking of, Cathy, do you want to speak to our fun radar survey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I don't know if any of you have gone over, but it was fascinating. We were there at varying times, but, he found about 200 unmarked burials. So they're all red flagged to the extent that the red flags have not fallen in the stuff. I know Jeff and I talked about getting kind of little marker. I mean, everything's GPS marked too, but we kind of like the idea of having kind of a little physical thing. So Mr. Boy Scout troop leader or something came up with some creative ways of putting something in the ground that wasn't going to mess with the ground for the ground crew.
Yeah, that's the big thing. We don't want to mess up.
And then
mowers.
Once he gets the map to us, which he said, I think it was like 60, 90 days is the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
They did the drone scanning of the etchings too. How clear all of that's going to be, we don't know, but we are going to fill in the missing data from data we have. And then I think one day when the weather's nicer, Monica and I and Jeff will go over and kind of see, like, if there's any people on maps that we don't have a stone for that we can sort of place now that we have all of these now that we know where a lot of these bodies are.
Mm-hmm.
So we also got a lot of really good, I really plugged it on the Lower Makefield is a great place to be Facebook group, and we got a lot of really positive feedback. So I'm just trying to keep what we're doing front and center. Did you want to say something, Tom?
Yeah, did they give you any depth information? So, we're not looking at, boulders versus buried.
He didn't, did you?
Yeah, I talked with him while he was going. It was quite annoying. Poor guy. Probably would have gone faster if I hadn't been there. Because I really wanted to know if he was seeing any stones that we could exhume. Would you exhume a stone? That's creepy, but yeah. But he said no. Everything he was noting was 6 feet. It like very clearly grapes, and he said across the board that's what he was seeing. So, and you'll see. I mean, there's a ton. What did we end up with? 200.
Yeah, something like that. I think there was like about 88 on the segregated side and 140 or 41 on the other side. And that was just my sort of half-assed counting of the flags. We'll know more when we get the official maps.
But they do, I mean, you're seeing a ton of little red flags, but they do make sense as much as that cemetery can make sense. But it's not like, yeah, I mean, they are after each other. They're not in really good rows, but I think not in really cohesive rows, but in space that makes sense that there's room. It's not like there's 5 on top of each other or anything like that.
And this was not 3-dimensional, right?
Correct. No imaging, just radar. But it'll be awesome. This is going to be such a help in the restoration. And it also means I think our restoration money is going to go a lot further, because a lot of the work of just prepping and figuring out what's there and cataloging and everything and making sure that these guys know what we have is all going to be completely ready. So I'm excited. And another thing, and I know I owe you a meeting, Tom. I finally got my computer back, everyone. So that anyone that I said, sorry, I can't do anything without my computer, it's here. So I'm also working on creating a process for how we catalog and store research on the Google Drive, because more and more people are interested in helping us research people that are buried there, which is great, but it's getting really messy. So I'm working on that process so that anyone that comes on, it's pretty easy to onboard them and just give them a couple names and they can start saving things in a clean fashion. And we have basically on some work Cathy's done, we have a loose list of names to kind of focus on for the ghost tour for this year. Also QR code, it's kind of the same list. Right now, and shout really if because a lot of them are families. So if there's any families in there anyone specific in the families, because once I started making this list, it wasn't just family. And I was like, oh God, it's getting really long. Abraham Brown, George Congo, the Chambers family, the Neild family, the Cook family, the Duncan family, the Lewis family, the Van Horn family, the White family, and the Jenkins family. Those all are people for various reasons we thought would be interesting this year to kind of focus in on. But when we talk about the family, some of them have 8, 9 people in there. So like the Neilds, that's a ton of people. So we're going to have to narrow it down a bit. But anyways, we have a bunch of people that are not a bunch, but a handful of people. And I think it's easy enough to find more. So that's fun. Any questions or additions or anything? Or shout if any of you are interested in doing the research on Ancestry and just Google diving, is the more the merrier, especially once the process is set up. It'll be pretty simple. And then it's just a matter of putting time into research if that's your bag.
I haven't been over to the cemetery since the ghost tour. How are the QR codes holding up?
Great.
Good.
Great.
Sorry. I texted Dawn and Monica this. So I had just met with Dawn and I'm driving home and I drive by the cemetery and I see somebody in there and I'm like, eh! And it was like a family and they're like looking at the QR codes and they were like cemetery geeks. So I recruited them for the ghost tour.
Did you find Commodore Duncan?
Find him? What is that? What do you mean? I don't know off the top of my head. I know the Duncans are all the really tall stones in the middle of the original section.
Yeah, I know. It's
But who's
funny.
Commodore?
I was doing a bunch of census data for Shirley Corsi down at the Gather Place.
Uh-huh.
And the Duncan family is a mixed race family, but they had a 4-year-old on one of the census data and his name was Commodore Duncan. I thought it was so cute.
Oh, no, we don't have, no, I know they have the 3 boys, two of which died within like a month of each other, all there. But no one young. I mean, young, but not 4 or anything like that. Although you said he was 4 at census, so not confirmed when he died on the census. So we don't, hopefully Commodore lived a long and happy life. It is a great name.
Before we get off of Slate Hill, I sent around to everybody
Yes.
a page of what the gift line may look like. Mitch's son, Matt's been great. It's great. Product looks not bad, actually. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I think we can make some money doing this. And you can, there's a ton of product you can pick from, and it doesn't cost us anything.
Right.
So there are no monthly fees, no upfront fees, nothing. So what it's going to come down to is really manipulating the images and placing them on the product. And can I do that? I don't even know if I can do that. I mean, I spent about 2 hours with the person up in Kennebunkport, Maine, who does this, and she's a little ADD, and she would not leave me alone. She kept telling me to snip this and snip that. And I've known her for many, many years. And I said, no, I can't possibly do this. Can Matt probably do it?
My son is a graphic designer,
Perfect.
and he really got into this. Like I told you, I didn't think he'd have the time,
Mhm.
and I was going to do it, and I am not a graphic designer.
Right. That would be
But he's
great.
done a great job, and he's into it. He'll do whatever you need.
I can put him in touch with my
Yes.
buddy Cynthia,
Yes.
and she will sit there and
They
go
will-
through
they
the
will
whole
talk
thing and
their
show him exactly.
language, and they will know.
All right,
exactly
so-
what it is they
What to
need to
do.
do.
I guess you guys are the committee on this now, huh?
I guess
You
so.
guys, you got on another committee there, Mitch.
Yeah.
All right, we like that, multiple committees. Okay, so, when you get like kind of a final proposal, let me know and I'll get it on the agenda. And if anybody else wants to
I'll talk
join
to
the
you then.
committee.
Okay, yeah, great.
All right, so next, you done with Slate Hill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Patterson Farm, submission, Joe, any updates?
Yes, and I'll say something and then I'll let Helen say something. So Helen and I met this week. Helen has gone through and looked at the agricultural data for the farm. The context we're using, it requires that we compare the data for the farm to that of the averages for Lower Makefield Township. And so Helen's done that and more, and I'll let her talk a little bit about the more she's done. So I have all of that data on paper and I need to put it into Excel. And so once we get that done, I think we can have a solid draft of the historic significance section and send that off to SHPO and get their feedback. So Helen, I'll let you talk a little bit more about the work that you did.
Anything you want to add about the work you've done on Patterson Farm?
We've done some analysis of adjacent farms through the 3 periods of possible significance, including across the street at the the farms that were farmed by the Palmers and the farms that were farmed by I'm blanking, direct neighbors across the street. Yeah. Anyway, also Barclay Knight, who was a huge farmer on the corner of Township Line and Langhorne Road, who also was an adjacent to the historic district. So it kind of plays into what's happening with the township. And as I said, the 2 Palmers. And then some people who were more further distant, like the what is currently Farmview, Alderston, and Macclesfield. Yet places that are still open in the township to compare what could be the yields from them. But anyway, so we're comparing yields, and most of it finds all of our farms in Lower Makefield way above average. So it'll be great. I hope, right, Joe? How are
Yep,
those
it'll-
charts coming? Okay.
All right. Anything else, Patterson Farm? Damn, we're trucking today. So we can actually have a decent discussion on the big question. But first is 250, and I'm going to let, I guess, Mitch go first.
Sure.
And then if Helen has anything.
Well, I've had a couple of meetings and discussions. I met with Jennifer Martin up at the Washington Crossing. She's the executive director up there. Lovely woman. Monica joined me on that meeting, and they filled us in on all the things that they were doing. And I sent out an email to everybody on the 21st. I have it here if you need me to go over it. But what I'm suggesting we do is I think we should be staying close to Jennifer and what Washington Township, Washington Crossing is doing. She's also one of the lead people at the America 250 at Bucks. I was at the Bucks meeting, which I'll go over that next. And she's part of that as well. They also are the 503C1 or C1C, whatever it's called, that is going to be handling the financing and the money that comes through from any funds they raise or any donations or any money that they're going to get. They have a great plan, especially on their educational part. I think we ought to ride along with her on it and include the town and the town schools in what she's doing. And I can get more detail on that as she gives me more detail on it. I know that they're planning 2 trips. One is for first graders through fourth graders to take a bus ride out of Washington Crossing out to Trenton. And another one would be the 5th graders through 8th grade to go to Princeton to see the battlefields there as part of their program. And I think we can help push that into the schools here to give everybody a chance to start with that types of events. They're going to have reenactors. They have like 300 of them already hired and ready to go. And they're rebuilding the boat that Washington had crossed with that's going to be permanently stocked there, that they're going to allow people to go and look at and climb on and be part of and see it and what have you, among other things. So they're really, really into it. They're really getting involved in it. Now, the connection between Bucks 250 and this is Bucks 250 has a website. It's not complete yet, but it will be interactive. And everybody who has something to do with America 250, meaning us and others, will be able to upload our information to it and share their website and use that website basically as a connection to what we're going to be doing down here, rather than us having to go and reinvent the wheel. It's a beautiful website. In fact, I'm going to send them some photos of Slate Hill Cemetery that they'll put up on the website once it's up and running. They're asking for pictures. They've also made a very valid point, which is everybody seems to be focusing on the role of the Revolution. This is America 250, not America 1776. So they're looking into indigenous situations that went on. They're looking at the Civil War, Reconstruction, possibly as far as World War I, World War II, and try to place some concepts together as to what those time frames can have in terms of the celebration of America 250. I don't know if anybody here has thought beyond that. I know when I heard this, I was like, duh. You know, it's such an obvious thing. And I know I never thought more of it. I was always looking at what's Washington done, when in turn, there's a lot more going on that Bucks County is looking to put together on it. We have a contact, a guy named Andre Castillo. He's the engagement coordinator. He's the one who will be issuing funds and will be dealing with combining what local places are doing together. He's the main man. They're also working on a trail map that will show the various types of activities that are going on in Bucks County. We can be included in that once we know what we want to do. And they're looking to raise some money. They're going to put a map out, and they're going to have sponsorships on the map. And they want the map not only to be online, they want a physical copy to be given out to people the day of whatever the events are, so they have it and they can actually trace it and follow whatever else went on there. There is a fundraiser at the Pearl S. Buck House on April 10th or the 17th. We'll know for sure. From 5:30 to 8. It's also some networking, and it's to raise money for America 250. And they're also going to have storytellers there who are going to talk about heroes who have been around for the last 250 years from Lower Makefield and such. So if we have any thing that we'd like to include in that, I can get that information off to the people involved in running that particular fundraiser. I know I'm planning on attending it. I've never seen the Pearl Buckhouse, and I've always wanted to, so I guess that's a good opportunity to do that. Right now, they'll look PA 250 and this Andre Castillo. They are looking to spend 5 to 10 grand for projects of historic preservation that they can include into this program. And right now they don't have the funding, but that's where they want to head. So they're just starting up now at Bucks 250, but they're really involved in getting it going. And Washington Township is a hook to them, and I think we ought to ride along with that. As I get more, I'll let you know. The next meeting of the Bucks 250 is going to be on March 27th here in Morrisville. I'll go to that one. In fact, Helen, I'm going to give you the list of the meetings. You can put that into the minutes because I can't make one of them, but I'll be overseas. So if you want to just pass that over to Helen. But I'll go to the next one on March 27th, and that's pretty much what we've looked at and what's going on outside of us. And now we know what's going on outside of us. At some point, I think we really have to start to get laser focused on where we want to go and what we want to do.
Can I ask what might be a dumb question, but are they secure in their funding? Because I'm on some of these national restoration things and people are.
No, they're not yet, but
Okay.
they feel really confident that they will be. Plus, they have a huge fundraising operation
They're
there.
not getting it from.
I don't think so. They're getting it from the state.
Can I make a couple proposals of
Please
projects
do.
for us that are nothing new, kind of on board with what we've been talking about? But, and I'm so sorry I missed, that's not what I want to do. Oh. Stop share. Sorry. That I missed Helen's presentation because it kind of relies on what she said, but I just want to make sure. So one of the ideas we talked about was highlighting Makefield because, and this is an example Jennifer shared with us of what is called a battle window. This is what they put up in Princeton last year. But basically it's glass. We've talked about this with artist rendering of what that space looked like. And I think Makefield is an amazing opportunity for that because it's wide open fields. So we really could, it wouldn't be a battle. It would be an encampment window, I guess.
Like Valley Forge.
Yeah, I think I love this because it is something we can put up for 250. But it also is permanent, so it can continue after. I think the pros, to me, the pros of it are we can reach tons of people every year that are not looking for, they're not history buffs looking for the stuff. It's bored parents at Makefield walking around or kids seeing it. I think we can really just reach a lot of people that aren't looking for history very easily, which I think is a really interesting thing. I've reached out to Ashley, who is involved in New Jersey, all this stuff in New Jersey, and this was in Princeton. So I'm trying to find out contacts of what this is, how much it costs, that kind of stuff. And I'll share that as soon as I have it. I've also reached out to an artist I know, like, how would someone put something like this together? So I'm trying to figure out the logistics, but I love this idea personally, and I'm going to push it until you guys tell me to stop. And then second, I think, I know Helen's presentation, the bit I saw, she at the end said, I think this is where the path should go. I think we're all very clear, I think, on liking the idea of some sort of path, even if it is just a path that is noted on various maps and heads up. Like maybe there doesn't have to be a big event that we produce and deal with. It can just be a path that people can follow in their cars or just notice when they're driving around. Like, oh, there's that. One of the things that came up, I know Dawn is leading a group of researchers trying to define or call out what the LMT residents that we know that were patriots that were involved in the war. It started as a Slate Hill Cemetery thing. We're kind of hitting, we're failing there, but that's okay. To me, there's a whole other thing just with people that were alive during the revolution that I think we can focus our QR codes and ghost tour and stuff. It doesn't have to be they fought, but that's separate. But I think you, Dawn, you shared with us a list of 70 men who we believe fought in the war. And I was thinking, I feel like I've driven through so many small towns that have like banners on their light posts of like the World War II veterans, their names and stuff, their pictures if they get it. Obviously, we don't have pictures of these men, but I think this could be a cool thing to include in that path that we're creating. If we're doing banners, we could put their names on it and like call out those patriots. I think that would be a really simple way to call out those names. We have a lot of information. So if we wanted, put QR codes on them if they're walking or I don't know, whatever, but at the very least, names and dates or whatever, private, whatever, I think would be really a great way to use those names and call them out and just make it feel a little more human to people.
I'm still pushing for the flags on the houses. Because the houses were here, the ones that are left. And maybe the ghost houses too, the ones where the houses were. But basically we should let people know that your house was pretty much where Peter Van Sant's distillery was in Yardley Hunt. So you are eligible to put out our flag for the revolution and, do something like that.
Is that in addition to the path? It's a separate thing?
Yeah, this is a separate thing.
Cool.
Cool. Just marking the houses that the soldiers could have gone into if they were looking for shelter from a nasty snowstorm or something while they were camped here in Lower Makefield.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I love that.
Oh, and then I still would like an encampment at Macclesfield. I think we should do that. And I don't know how we can manage to get the supervisors on board with it. But I know I talked to Monica at Park and Rec and she was interested in it. So, why not at least, nobody's really down there in December and we're talking, the date, what was that date, Tom?
Number 6.
Yeah, the 8th through the 13th of December, we can ask. And, and then they can walk up through town, take Darlington Road, go up 532 and cross with the rest of the guys that'll be going across. Because there's somewhere where the Pennsylvania militia was. And I think they were on, Thomas Yardley / Joshua Anderson's farm. Because they were neck and neck.
I just got 2 more things that I had to add. Jim hooked me up with a gentleman who everybody seems to know except for me, Larry Kidder.
Yeah, he's speaking here this Sunday.
Yeah. I spoke to him quite extensively about what happened in Lower Makefield. He has a book he's writing about it. He sent me the 22 pages of it, which is about the Lower Makefield portion of it. If anybody wants me to,
I'd like to see what he's wrote.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what he says.
Yeah, it's very interesting, although there's nothing there that says this was, here. But I'll send it to everybody then. It's 22 pages, but
there's no definitive proof
Right.
where Washington was on certain days. There really is no, there is no
That's pretty
letter.
much Larry's
He's
conclusion.
in camp. And so where's the camp? That's the question.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
So I'll send that to everybody, look it over, and if you have any information, it seems everybody knows him, so just have a
my other
conversation with them
Uncle Larry?
if you need to.
so my other 2 takes are the race. I think we should do in better weather, like, summertime type weather or late spring. When something else has happened in like 250 years from when Washington lost the Battle of Long Island or something like that. And then something about the octagonal schoolhouse has to come out as well. Sorry, I'm dragging her out there. It needs funding. We need to get that property and do something with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we're going to get the kind of funding that we're talking about for all this stuff, but I think we do
Right.
get budgets and start.
Maybe we can shake
planning
some
for-
money out of Bucks County. I mean,
Right. Well, I think that's one of the reasons I
Bucks
love
County is much better off than we are.
the tour or the path
they seem they're
and the
gonna-
flags. I like that because that's relatively low cost poles and flags, that I feel like is doable. And the window, I feel like also in the grand scheme is probably going to be pretty affordable, but again, I'll work on that. But to me, those 2 things alone are low cost and make a big impact. I think one thing we didn't talk about is schools. And I would love, I have thoughts on that, but I'm gonna take over. But I was thinking one of the things, where did I put my notes on that? Sorry, just get it in front of me.
Well, a year
yeah.
later, Moses Moon is advertising for a horse that got stolen when he was visiting the Valley Forge encampment. So it says to me that the Moons, especially the younger Moons, were not pacifists. So the fact that Moses had created this schoolhouse was because he cared about education and he was trying to think of the future. But his family still got sucked into this war. You know, it's one of those sort of sad things that happens. And we have so many lower Makefield families that we can document a split. The people who lived on the Patterson farm, Benjamin joined the British Army. The other brother, Malin, fights with the militia. You know, I mean, that's huge. Brother fighting brother.
Well, and I think that's a lot of one of the things that we're talking about with the research group is what are we doing with this research? What's the point of it? And obviously articles came up, like we could obviously write a bunch of articles and get those out in the papers. Was there anything? I was wondering, like, do we maybe create a small book pamphlet, and that can be available of all these stories or just of the articles. We just bind it and have it at these events that shares all the information. Because I don't think we're going to be able to create experiences where we share all of those stories, but we have great stories. And if people want to write them, why don't we get it out there? I think we absolutely can do that.
I also have a friend who's willing to volunteer her house for dinner. She has a historic house off of Woodside Road, and she said she would be interested to have people come through her house and look at it. The Slacks supposedly were among the people hurrying Washington across. So they literally are putting their money where their mouth is and taking him across the river.
That might be an interesting thing, Mitch, to offer to our buddy, your contact at Bucks, as maybe like a high-end fundraiser. Because again, that's very small, so that's not really a big community event. But if he has, 12 people that have real money and they could have a dinner in a historic house, that could be a fundraiser and he can plan it. But we've got a house, that's great.
Yeah, and I reread the story of the Winders when I was doing some research for that house on the Wright's farm. And that is in Davis, that story about Washington visiting the house with the brother in the basement, hiding in the barrel. So that's the really only good Washington was here visiting Lower Makefield story that I've ever heard, but it's not documented anywhere.
Real fast, I found my notes on the schools that I was thinking, just one proposal. Because my daughter's in 4th grade and she's constantly saying, I want to bring my friends to Slate Hill. I want to bring my friends to Slate Hill, like the Clash. But I think it's kind of boring for 4th graders just to walk around a cemetery. How do we make it interesting? And I was remembering the audio portion we did of this ghost tour last year when we lost the actor the last time. We could, if they are all coming up, the schools, we need to get the schools to do it. But if they're game and we bring the kids and it's all different days, we can make it a whole audio thing where someone walks them through. But we have, we have the speakers hidden behind various gravestones. So when we get to the gravestone, the ghost talks to them and tells them about their life, which I think is a little more multisensory, which is good for kids. Or if we are able to coordinate it so it's all over one day and every hour a different school comes, we could, in theory, do a mini ghost tour and have actors if we want to do that. That seems probably unlikely to get the schools that coordinated, but just an idea. And then I was thinking the same schools, then part of the reason to get them involved, that's a cool thing. And then the schools that we get there, they're the ones that then can be a part of proposing and then voting on what goes in the time capsule.
I'm waiting to hear back from Pennsbury to see what they have to say about this. But obviously, the 250 celebration would be historically fantastic for these kids. So when I talk to him, I'll let you know what's going on.
Well, and I think it would be so cool, Mitch, to your point of what they're trying to do. We obviously can highlight revolution, but there's so much more history. It's such a great, huge swath of our U.S. history there. We can tell stories of so many different time periods. So I just keep trying to think of ideas we can do that are cost effective and not a ton of work. So yeah, any way I can help with the school stuff, let me know.
Okay, there's also was one other name that was thrown out me that everybody knows that I just am learning about.
Jeff Marshall.
That's the guy. Jeff Marshall. Jennifer had talked to us about it at the meeting. She said she would hook us up, just give her a call, she'll take care of it. But then I find out we're already hooked up to Jeff Marshall, and everybody here knows him and knows what he can tell us. So just one more name that was thrown out who could be a resource. A resource. He has information about what. Yeah.
Jeff's not, Jeff had spent most of his life in Doylestown, Wrightstown, Doylestown, but he's done a lot down here, so he can certainly, was thinking though of the houses, because Jeff is basically someone who's doing that for most of his career. We have tons of historic houses here, and it's been a long time since we've had a historic tour. So the kind of thing we could suggest to the Historic Society, if they were reconstituted and running, would be have a historic tour. It makes money. It's a terrific opportunity. You get hundreds of people. You can have trolleys or whatever, taking people around from site to site, but it's a lot of work. So just putting it out there, because we certainly have houses that could represent George Washington very easily, and all the way up, since most of our houses have been lived in since they were first created, all the way up to the present. So basically history that goes across time in an old house.
Mitch, can you resend any information on grants? I know we've talked about grants, and I know in my mind, the February meeting was kind of our deadline for, we need to have an idea of what we're doing to submit
from
for the
Bucks.
grant. I don't know. I get this project very confused, or I think maybe they originally came from Joe, but there's some grant that's not massive, but there's some grant that's due soonish for
Right.
this stuff.
Yeah, it was one that was due in like November or December, and then there's another that's due like, I think, April, Monica. So yeah, I think it should be on the Bucks 250 site.
Okay. I'll look.
I'll talk to my contact.
Yeah, if you can look into it, because I know we had really talked about when we started getting deep into this, saying at the February meeting, we want to have an idea of what projects we want to spend money on to ask for this grant. Again, the grant's not a ton of money, but we might as well. And at the very least, I figure that's one of the reasons I'm trying really hard to get the monies, figure out the costs of this window, because that's a hard cost I could put into a grant, whereas other stuff seems very nebulous still. But it was a Bucks 250 grant, Joe? That's what it was?
Yeah, that's what it was, Drew. I'll see if I can find the email that I sent to it.
I know you sent it. Yeah, thank you. I will look too. I get this stuff lost. Okay, I'll stop talking.
All right. Anything else on 250?
That's where we're at. It's gonna be here before you know it.
I do have a question, and this is mostly for Helen, because we're using that Makefield 66 list. Is that the right list we should be using for researching patriots?
There's two companies that were formed officially that have their lists. I mean, there were more than that formed. That's the sad part. These are the only two lists that we have of companies that were formed in the local militia. So yeah, that's the correct, it's the only two that we have. So you use them both.
And they were all?
They were all associators, and not all from Lower Makefield. So unfortunately, you're going to find a lot over toward Newtown, all the way to Northampton, and there's many in Falls Township. So Middletown, Newtown Township, Newtown Borough, because Newtown Borough was the county seat at the time, and then all the way, the ones from Spring Mill, there's some that actually say Spring Mill. That's the mill that crosses on 332 that you go past this theater now and going up toward Northampton. So yeah, so basically there's people from Northampton on that list as well. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that.
Okay, cool. Anything else? All right, so we had two things on new business. One, I had put on the approval of expenses for cataloging project, and we're just going to put that on hold till next month because we're not prepared with a budget. And then the second thing is, and I don't know, Joe, you want to lead this? How do we prioritize what historical resources to save, kind of as we're getting all these things in place with the demolition ordinance, et cetera? So yeah, Joe, do you want to kind of start the discussion?
I will, Cathy, and then you can hopefully pick it up. So I think one of the issues that we're faced with right now, when Cathy went through that list of houses that are being demolished, is we're reacting. We're things are happening and we're reacting to them. And, it seems like every time we get a house that's being demolished, we think it absolutely needs to be saved, right? And that's just not possible, right? I mean, we can't stun the whole development of the township, right? So the way to really kind of get out of that reactionary phase is to come up with a list. And I'll let Helen talk about this a little bit because I know she's done some thinking about it. But once we start to get, and I don't even know if we need to actually wait that long because we know, like, we can use the old historic resource survey, right? But we should start to create a list of houses that we believe to be historically significant. Now, we need to justify that. We can't just say, well, we deemed it to be historically significant, so it is, right? But we should start to create that list. And Helen had an idea that we should act. She actually was basing it on something from Upper Dublin, which we should distribute. That we should kind of prioritize that list based on certain classes. And I'll let her speak to that. And then we know how hard we should go after some of these. Like, you might look at something like Wright Farm and say, it wasn't really very high on our list, so let it go. But then you look at some of the other ones that we're dealing with, two of the other ones that we're dealing with, they're built in the early 1800s, and for one reason or another could be a high priority for us. So I think we need to start to flesh that out. I don't want this in the demolition ordinance, though, because that'll just make it really complicated and allow people cherry pick. But I want us to have it so we know internally how hard we should fight for these things. So Helen, maybe I can ask you to explain to people what Upper Dublin did in order to do the prioritization of their historic properties.
Explain what Upper Dublin did to prioritize. Okay.
Okay, so Upper
I'd
Dublin.
like to see the cone of silence from Get Smart.
It's just a reverb in the microphone. So Upper Dublin has a list A, which was their oldest, most beautiful houses, usually ones that were very well kept all the way through and are still gorgeous and are obvious. So there's just giant houses on main streets that Upper Dublin, immediately put on this A list. And then the B list was houses that were, had odd inclusions perhaps, or were not as well kept, or didn't have the accoutrement barns or other buildings that would give it that context of being a farmyard, or, that had things that were less stellar about it, maybe parts missing, looked like something not quite right. But they're still old, so you want to save them, and that's the B list. Okay, so my daughter's house was on the B list. And it was because it was a tenant house of the A-list house. So it was a less important house. It had a small barn, but it was, obviously less well-built. It had a nasty 1920s addition that could easily come off and did. But, basically it was certainly not so intense as the A-list house. Well, just lately, they have found a diary of the guy who lived in her house, the B house. And the diary is a complete pre-antebellum, so 1840s to 1860s account of various people that this person had met at the local meeting and had worked with in the Abolitionist Society, including Lucretia Mott and all these famous people that actually had come to this little house that she's living in. and therefore probably much more important than the big house. So you don't know when you put a house on a list, what's going to happen when future history finds something else. So there's always a risk, but in any case, Upper Dublin had told the contractor who bought Virginia's house originally that he could not tear it down. So it was on the protected list, and luckily she came around and saved it. But, it really, so how do we do this? And I was just lately thinking, Joe, about sites. Not even houses, not even structures, but what happens with historic sites? That's another whole can of worms, but does our demolition permit apply to that? I was thinking of the octagonal schoolhouse, obviously, but yeah, but it's a fail. Yeah, it's a big fail.
And Helen, where have they done this? Have they done this as part of a demolition ordinance, or do they have some type of historic overlay? Where can we find the details around what Upper Dublin did?
It's in its actual zoning map. It's part of the zoning for Upper Dublin.
Okay.
So, and then they have a reference to it. So I imagine it really is an overlay.
Okay.
So what is the thinking, Joe? We get the historic survey done, and then we create an overlay on that, at least internally. And so that we know when I get an email from Jim or whoever the chair is who gets an email from Jim saying, oh, there's this property.
Yeah, and how much can you actually save properties? Yeah, again, the fussodectomy, every time I drive by it, I look at it and it just makes my blood curdle because, I was on the board when that happened, and it is difficult to see. You know what I'm referring to? The
No.
fussodectomy?
No, I don't know.
Scammell's Corners.
Okay.
So when you have a house and somebody who's a preservationist, and we had said you can't tear it down, the supervisors had backed us on that. And they said, well, how much of it can't we tear down? And we kind of got backed into the corner where we said, well, you must leave the facade that Lower Makefield people are familiar with and trade that for a facade easement. So we created this facade easement thing at that point in time in Lower Makefield, so that the owner of that property gets to take 10% of her property taxes off before keeping the facade.
Mm-hmm.
But then totally tore down the rest of the house behind it and put it in Arlene's house. So yeah, there we are. What is it that we want? Do we want to see the house? So say a house like Seneca Bean's house, do we want to see that house the way it is from the street stay like that forever? Or is there some way that we can finagle? You can do what you want behind the facade. We can't ever deal with anything that someone does on the interior of their house. They can rip it all out. We had one person who did that, who took a house on Lindenhurst Road and totally ripped out the interior of the house all the way to the roof. And then, is that preserving a property?
I think so. Cathy, you asked about starting, and these other projects are unfolding slower than I anticipated. I really, historic research, it'll start. I think we'll probably can get a first readout like in the summer or so. I'm not sure what a demolition ordinance, how fast that'll go. But we do have data today. We do have the 2007 survey, which has a number of properties that date up through the end of the 19th century. I mean, Helen showed you guys a list today of properties that were standing here in the 18th century. I think we should just start with that. I think we should just start with listing them. I mean, Cathy, we talked earlier today about, with Colin about putting them on Google Maps, like, just putting it in so people know where they are. We put pins around them. I would just start by age, because I mean, when you start looking at things from the 18th century, this is really kind of a no-brainer. Of course they're historic. Those are first houses that were built in this township. And you can really kind of say that for a lot of houses, even going up to 1850. So they're a no-brainer to do that. And we should just start by creating that as being our list. And then, as Helen said, depending upon the condition or depending upon the significance, do we put it as a, we'll chain ourselves to the front door so this thing doesn't get demolished? Or do we say, we'll make a yeoman's attempt to, make
I'm
sure
there.
it's documented,
Here's the chief stuff.
Oh, you actually have a physical?
Yes, I even have the physical list right here.
I was just talking to Joe about that when we met with Colin, and I had said that, does somebody actually have the list rather than 17,000 PDFs? Because what I'm going to do,
That has all three.
thank you so much. I'm going to create a spreadsheet and I'm going to put them on Google Maps, and that's going to be our starting place. And then maybe we can kind of bring it here and
Some of them are
Or
gone.
have you, like,
Some of them are
review it?
gone, and I didn't cross off the ones that are gone.
that's fine. Let me just get a base list started in the map, and then I figured as we get the new one, then some of the stuff will be eliminated. But this is great.
Right.
I was just asking Joe about this before, because I was like, it is literally 700 PDFs on the drive. Oh, it's a good accident. No, I can keep it right for now.
Yeah,
All right.
back to work. Yeah, I think let's do that, and let's
Because I don't
start,
have enough projects.
once we have the list, let's start discussing,
Just start and work backwards. It'll be fine.
Okay. Let me get this going, and then I can have, Helen and Joe do a first review, and then we can always bring it to the commission for kind of more of a robust discussion. That sounds good?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this, Joe?
No, I will stop.
All right. Any other public comment on? She's our public.
I have one quick thing I forgot to mention, and I want your guys' approval. So I don't know if anyone else is on this email, but I got an email from Monica at the parks with deadlines for the year for the township newsletter, which is exciting. There's 4. The first one's March 4th. So I figure we can write 4 articles for the township newsletter, mostly about what we're doing. It's kind of pitching us. It doesn't need to be super long. We did one last year about the ghost tour. I'm happy to do that again for this first one, just update people. But I don't want to just do that. If there's something different we'd like to do, but also think about the next one's in June, then August, and then November. Those are the next 3 deadlines. So work that we're doing that we might want to share if there's something different, or if you guys are okay with me doing the ghost tour.
Monica, I think I'm on the hook for doing something for Patterson Farm for March. I think that Dennis Stedman from the implementation committee asked me to write something up around the work that we're doing. So we may be able to double duty that, right?
Yeah, well, and I it was a mass email, so she wasn't like, "Hey, Monica."
Yeah, I know. And Stedman just sent me, I think it's.
But yeah, I also don't want to work on something.
I'll
that
let
she
you know
says-
after tomorrow. We have our meeting tomorrow night.
Okay.
Stedman, yeah.
I didn't want to
I'll-
miss the opportunity, but if it's already filled, that's great too. I just want to make sure we were utilizing it.
I'll tell you what, if I'm not doing it for this time, I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I'm all for you doing it, and I think the GPNR is,
Yeah,
great as we
yeah,
get
that's
that in there
fine.
too.
That might be more
People
relevant.
find that
than the
really
ghost tour.
fascinating.
Yeah. That's a good call.
Okay.
Mhm.
And we can do that for the next one too.
Yeah, but that not a rush, because hopefully then we'll have the more details. All right. Any other comments? Look at that. We're breaking it before 9. All right, motion. Oh, wait, Joe, were going to say something?
No, I just said, wow,
Okay.
I mean, since we have this new chair, we move right through these things without a problem. It's really great.
Motion,
Although I forget to announce the meeting, so thankfully Tom is here to.
motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I need one of them. Tom,
Who's first thing? Who's making a motion? Oh,
And you?
Jeff.
Jeff,
Jeff, Tom.
Tom. Okay, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is
Next month.
March 12th. See you then.
See you then. Bye.
Okay.